Hi there, everyone. Hope you are having a wonderful day. I'm here in Cape Town for the first AGM in the Africa Bioinformatics Institute, and here I have one of our participants here. Tell us about yourself, sir.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ananyo, and I'm based at the Sydney Brenner Institute for Molecular Biosciences, University of Witwatersrand, and I work in the area of population genetics and genetic epidemiology. So, ABI is a home for many of my colleagues and collaborators for a long time. So, I'm excited to be here, and I can see our collaborations taking a formal shape via ABI, which is really a good day for us.
Okay, that's great. So tell us a little bit about your institution and your research specifically. Do you work on what type of pathogens, virus, bacteria?
Right. So our institute, SBIMB, is a research institute. So we do only research, and our main focus is precision medicine. So it's implementing precision medicine. So we have decided to work only on humans, though we have colleagues who work on microbiome as well. But predominantly, our focus is human, and it's non-communicable diseases. So we have a big group which is working on cardiovascular diseases, but we also have a cancer genetics group and a pharmacogenomics group. So it's a very informal kind of setup where we collaborate with each other. And what we realize is to be able to do this, we really need to understand African populations. So what we are doing is we are also implementing projects to develop a good understanding of African diversity and build genomic resources that would enable efficient analysis of African genomic data and put up nuances which won't be there unless we have a good understanding of African diversity.
Right. So at this, you essentially go from sample collection
Yeah.
to DNA RNA extraction in the wet lab to actually sequencing the raw data. So you get your file for downstream analysis in bioinformatics.
So I think what we do is we have fields, and our sites are distributed all across Africa. So I think as SBIMB network, we have presence in 15 or 16 African countries. We do collect DNA and RNA, but we don't do large scale sequencing. We don't have infrastructure for that.
Okay.
So we outsource our sequencing, but then once the data comes, we are, we will say, good at doing bioinformatics. So we do most of the analytic work at
Okay.
SBIMB.
Okay. So I think tell us about some of the challenges here. So you get different types of data from different institutions, and obviously there's maybe quality control issues. There's mix, mutations. There's mix and
Indeed, yeah. I think, yeah, you got the problem. Like, that's a huge problem to get the quality really standardized across sites so that, and this has happened in past that some of the places where there are problems with resources or other issues, like probably their machines are not as good. So we have had problems. So now we employ lots of checks and balances. We kind of decide on a SOP on how to go about it. And even we visit sites just to see that things are happening the way they should be. But I think we are minimizing those errors, but they're still there. But I think with time we will bridge those gaps, and we will have high quality samples from all over Africa.
so at some point in time you hope to have very little or no contamination. And
Yes.
once you have these samples, you do the downstream analysis, which is bioinformatics. And now you spoke about, there's different types of non-communicable disease, cancer, TB, things like that. And there's different bioinformatics tools, different next flow pipelines, Conda. Tell us a little bit about that process.
Yes, so I think our pipeline development is like someone, you'll meet Scott Hazelhurst here. He is the lead of the bioinformatics pipeline development. And we already have developed many pipelines, which was under the H3A umbrella, but it is
Yes.
kind of still very related to ABI. And yeah, we try to develop some new tools as well, but like one of our focus is to really employ different kinds of tools and optimize them for African settings, because it's either the parameter you need or the p-value threshold, because there's always a debate that because African genomes are more diverse. So can we employ the same p-values that we employ for, let's say, European population to African population? So what we also try to do is to do some simulation work, empirical work, to really arrive at cutoffs, reference panels, etc., which are tailor-made for Africa.
Okay. I think you highlighted a very important point there. Africa is one of the largest landmass in the world. There's,
Yes.
52 different countries. The African population is very genetically diverse. And in addition to that, there's also a lot of disease variants across the whole continent. So your research is as broad as you can go. And as you say, there are challenges, infrastructures, funding. There's probably individual skill and labor shortages as well.
Exactly. I think I will maybe just highlight that people would think that it's very difficult to get a job, but we see it's more difficult to, when you have advertised for a position, it's very difficult to get people with skills. So for many positions, we have to advertise twice, thrice to get to a candidate. So it's also like, there is a lot of networking that can be done, which would really enable us to find more skilled people, but skilled people to find an employment in a shorter time. So that's a space where an organization or an infrastructure or a network like ABI could be really a game changer.
All right. So the Africa Bioinformatics Institute, what do you think the purpose of this is, other than networking and offer opportunities? What are you sort of wanting to gain here?
So we need a dedicated African bioinformatics resource development.
Okay.
In terms of there are a lot of challenges which are exclusive to African data, and unless we make something here ourselves, nobody's going to address that because it's
Sure.
not their problem. So I think this is very important. And it's also very important that we have whatever limited resources, skills, and data sets we have, we come together and analyze it to the fullest potential, because what we have realized is there are data sets, but these data sets are not accessible to all African researchers.
Yeah.
And here, because of challenges in data sharing, etc., we could also come up with a new way of bioinformatic analysis where you don't need the raw data, but you can use some amount of summary data, which is publicly shareable,
Sure.
and then that can be used by everyone around the continent.
Right.
And ABI could be like a wonderful home for such development work, because it takes a lot of effort to get to an algorithm, develop those pipelines. But if we can do that once.
So ideally, you're hoping that the ABI will be the umbrella, and then there will be different institutions that falls under the ABI that agrees that they will share their data,
Yes.
so their collaborators can use it, and networks. As you mentioned before, maybe your institution can't do the wet lab, then you outsource that to another institution, but the data that you get, the downstream analysis, the result, you will openly share that. So it's open source, it's fair, it's
Exactly.
accessible. Right, I see. So, talk to us about some of the skill shortages that you mentioned before. If someone that's coming out of, university, they're doing computer science, they're doing, microbiology, or they want to move into the field of bioinformatics or data analysis, the next generation of young scientists, what are some of the practical steps that they need to take?
That's a wonderful question. And we often ask this to our young students, because you might be very good in biology, but it doesn't mean that you are as good in computer science, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And secondly, you need a different kind of temperament. It's not a lab, so you and your machine, you spend hours together. So that's kind of a different mindset where you can really conceive a program, write it, debug it so that you get to good results. So that's a different kind of mindset. It's there, but we probably need to inspire more people to come to this,
Right.
show them the pros, in terms of what magic a good data analysis can do, but also the challenge is like it's challenging to really move from a setup where you are always with people to rather where we're in front of a screen for 6, maybe 10 or 12 hours a day. And that kind of mindset is probably prevents the right people from getting there, or attract some people who then find themselves in not a very good position. So to me, I think it's, do you have a logical mindset? Do you have an aptitude for programming? Do you have an spirit towards interacting with the computer and learning from it? So that kind of a setup probably would, uh, a mindset would probably enable you to really do well in bioinformatics.
Okay, so I mean, there's really, different skill levels one needs to adopt. As you say, some people need laboratory skills.
Yeah.
Some people are actually, coders, so they can analyze different code, make sense of that. So depending on your field or your field of interest, you might prefer one to the other. And then when you sort of envision this, I mean, you have lectured for a long period of time. You've seen students, postgraduate students. What are, you think, some good qualities someone should have if they want to sort of pursue a career in science?
Oh, that's so. I think, yeah. I mean, science should be rewarding to you, because I mean, if you are doing science, you should get fun out of it, because I mean, you are not the best paid in the world,
Okay.
and you don't have as much job security, especially during your years when you are doing a PhD or postdoc. But I think if you really enjoy the process of science, then I think I haven't seen anyone who was really good at his work and loved doing science had to leave because there were no jobs.
All
So
right.
it's more, but I think you have to sustain that prolonged period when your friends are owning a big car and you are driving a small one. But because this, the reward of doing science should be really something that should be inspiring you, and you
Right.
should feel like, okay, more, I'm going to solve this problem, or I'm going to work on this fun data set, so, or write this interesting code. That makes you really, so science should be the thing that should be the kick for you, and
Right.
if that's there, you will reach somewhere.
And then maybe tell us about some of your personal challenges. You have been in the field for a very long time. You probably have, rejection from funding, rejection from opportunities. So can you share some of your personal challenges and maybe some words of
Oh,
wisdom?
yeah. So, I mean, you should keep on applying, because either you get the money, the grant, or you get experience. So, both are valuable. So, and I think the experience of not getting something is what prepares you to write a better application the next time. Because most of the times our ideas are not crystallized. So, we think that we understand what we are seeing, but actually, even we don't. So it's only
Oh,
those rounds of rejection, and probably which we should do more. And this is especially for young investigators. If you have a proposal, if you have a concept note, send it to your colleagues. Make them grill you on that, because only when you know what's lacking, that develops your proposal by one step. And if you have done rounds of iteration, that's when your proposal is really good and probably it's going to make it. But unless you do that mental exercise, or where you get other people to challenge your idea, your proposal, and then you kind of try to address each of them one by one, that's a very important exercise. And the funders can do it by rejecting your application, but you can also preempt that and simulate that by talking to more colleagues. And again, I mean, coming back to ABI, this could be a wonderful forum. Imagine that I have a grant concept note, I send it to colleagues and ABI and say, if you were evaluating, how much would you rate me? What would be your criticism? And if I get 4 or 5 good criticisms, I moved a lot.
yeah, I think I get your perspective. You basically want a group of like-minded, highly skilled individuals to give you different point of view, so you
Yes,
get that feedback and really use that to polish up your writing, your
yes.
work, and then eventually that will be, you basically know your work front to back, and then you.
Yes. And also probably you might find someone where your weakness, and that's, hey, I am happy to collaborate. So you can form
Mm,
collaborations as well.
right.
Because you will probably know a small chunk of what you are proposing, but there are other people here who might know other bits. So if
Yes.
they can say, okay, can I collaborate with you? Then that would make the proposal all the more better, and increase the chances of getting good funding, because this is very competitive. So unless we are really doing good science in a using cutting edge techniques and have a thorough understanding of what we want to do, it's becoming progressively more difficult to make it. So that's why discussions, collaborations are the way where we can strengthen ourselves, and very easily if we have a setup like ABI.
Okay. So I actually want to acknowledge about the work and contribution you have done. I think it's very good to have someone like you who's inspired insights to speak to us, share your point of view. As we come to the last part of this interview, I have one final question I want to ask you. We are in the middle of 2026 now. AI has been with us for 2 3 years, and we see more and more tools, more and more large language models coming into our lives. How should the next generation of young scientists, PI, take this, and how should they think about this going forward?
That's such an interesting question. I often think because I'm getting towards the older side of the spectrum, so now I have to adapt to whatever new is coming. And I can see, like, for us, when we started with very small data sets, everything was manageable. But now we are dealing with data set that's as like orders of magnitude higher than what we used to know. So we have to upskill ourselves to really deal with those data sets, access the resources where we can analyze those data sets, because probably you won't be doing it in your local machine or your in-house cluster. You probably need a much larger resource. Learn to use trusted research environments such as UK Biobank or Million Veteran, because that's where you are going to get the next big AI application coming from, right? Because those are huge data sets. So I think we have to upskill ourselves. And I think, I mean, this brings me to the other point. I think where Africa is lagging is that we haven't even sequenced 100,000 people, whereas the global data sets are in order of at least a few million.
Oh wow!
So unless we really enlarge our data sets by orders of magnitude, the AI wave wouldn't be able to benefit us as much as it would do to other people, because just they have data sets that are custom made towards using AI. But if you are doing a couple of thousand, AI would be only because it doesn't have enough data set to process,
Not
to
enough
model.
sample size to take a constant
Yes.
average.
So I think as senior people, we should also try to enlarge, as include as many people as possible to our research, get the electronic health records working, so that if we have samples from someone, we can follow them up for years without putting a lot of money, because if they're in a system, we can just get the data out from there. And those are the innovations that would make us more, I mean, ready to get benefited by the AI, especially in like disease diagnosis or risk prediction, etc. So that's very important that we kind of look at that direction and prepare ourselves, because the world is changing fast. If we are not keeping pace, we will lag further behind.
But I'm sure, from what you're talking about, following patients for the next 5 10 years, there needs to be a long-term sustainable funding or resource model.
Exactly. And here I think our governments can also help us in terms of, if we have go to hospitals and have say, hey, can you set up electronic health records? And whenever a patient visits, you update it so that it gets communicated to us straight away. Imagine you are creating more and more data points by a simple visit of a person. So if a person visits for a few years, you get more data. But to keep it going, 5-year funding is not going to take you there. We need long-term funding, because, for example, like many good projects come to the continent and they do not reach their full potential, just because when we were almost there, the funding went off and we had to go for something different because the funding was there. So at least a decade level funding is very important for us to move to a direction and capitalize on what we are building, because we build a resource but then that's left. And that's true for many good databases. Like people create wonderful databases, the funding go and that's not updated, that's not current, so that becomes gradually useless.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing that happened to the H3 BioNet. The ground ended. A lot
Exactly.
of the project couldn't continue.
And that's when they were doing at their peak. They were one delivering on all fronts, publications, training, etc. But then that's gone, and people have to move to do other things to survive. So yeah, that's very important that especially our local governments or local funders or African Union, someone should think that if we have to build resources in Africa, it cannot be fun for 5 years and go. It should be in slightly longer term.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I really want to take this time. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much. Lovely questions. I enjoyed the interactions. Thank you.